So I'll get this started and then I'll turn it over to Susan. You know, we've had lots of discussions of cooperation among working groups. And we've had a partnership with the automotive working group for a number of things, with the system, the requirements working group with this, with the complexity working group. And we got into a discussion with Susan, who's the ICT working group, about possible cooperation. And the nature of it, from at least a systems view, was that if you wanted to evaluate your information or communications architecture to see is it fit for purpose, does it know how to evaluate the technical performance characteristics and its value, you really need to understand the context. And typically it's a system of systems context. That got us to discussing the fact that more and more in system of systems, we're looking at the system of systems, not in terms of the pure technical performance of the system of systems, but how the system of systems, when it operates in a realistic operational environment, how well does it meet the overall objectives of that environment? In defense, we call this mission engineering, where we have a mission and a mission objective, and we configure a system of systems to execute that mission. And you may have a beautifully engineered system of systems, but when you put it in that operational environment, all the externalities may be such that it's very effective or not effective at all. And if your objective is effectiveness and capability to lead, evaluating the performance of the system of systems in that context is important. And typically what you do with mission engineering is you look at how you intend to do it in your realistic environment and how well you do, where you fall short, fault isolating where you fall short, looking at options and trades, just like you would to improvement of an individual system. Only your system of interest is the broader community capability, or in defense terms, your mission capability. And typically a critical aspect of a system of systems is the information, communications, and technology component of it. So we thought, good opportunity. But we also thought, given we want to do multi-working groups, let's open it up to other working groups that would have the health working group may have done in this place, emergency management and other organizational kinds of or domain working groups. So we decided let's do an experiment. Let's initiate a cross-working group effort to take the general method of applying systems engineering to this type of a mission-driven community capability, and bring multiple working groups together to kind of exercise that process, to kind of evaluate the role of different working groups, assess the process, etc. So we're going to kick this off tomorrow afternoon. Partnership with our two working groups, but the other working groups have, as we've solicited, have joined up to be part and parcel of the kickoff. And we're going to focus it on emergency management, but with a specific focus on timely wildfires, which is why we call it Project Wildfires. We actually decided to do this last summer, so I can't say we expected it to be as topical as it is today. And so we're going to come together. The objectives are here. We've got a candidate approach for applying systems engineering that we're going to try out. And based on that feedback, probably involve thinking about that approach to basically see other kinds of activities we can do as a follow-on. And then we are looking at potentially providing this back to some of the users. And in fact, the kickoff tomorrow will actually include an interview and a discussion with emergency management person to talk about experience with a particular scenario that we're going to use. So with that, Susan, I'll turn it over to you.
So my background is communications, but primarily for public safety, transportation agencies, but I work a lot with them. So we deal a lot with emergency managers, wildfires, other emergency services, and making sure that they can communicate now. And so a lot of my clients that I work with directly are firefighters, the police agencies, they are emergency managers, they have issues that they want to fix. And so I'm talking to them all the time. And I see that all the different problems that they have, and I also see that Cozy could potentially help, right? And then also coming in and to all these conferences, and we have all these little silos, all these different working groups. How do we work across the board? And so looking at what would be something that brings us all together, like this is home, right? Anybody that gets affected by a wildfire, it's the community that gets affected. So, I mean, system of systems working group is perfect because if you look at all the aspects of it, I really do think that like resiliency requirements and any of the working groups potentially has some place to fit into this. I do it just because that's my daily job, right? And communications is an aspect of all of it. So if you have to have power, so you can't do anything about it. So, so I reached out, and so because I have those connections, I reached out to Patience Winningham, who is she was the emergency manager, the lead agency during the holiday farm fire. So we took a particular scenario. And she is fantastic. She's got an amazing background. Like when you hear, we did an interview with her, and so we recorded that. And you hear it, you're like, oh my gosh, all the things that's happened. But she has excellent background, but she's also willing to come on and take questions too remotely. So we'll have her on. But there's a lot of folks that are out there that have been doing these things, and I think by talking to the people that are in the field and hearing their experiences and seeing how they're working and learning from them, because they're doing a good job of how they operate. But can we take that and make it even better? So that's what I'd really like to see how we can support that.
Want to go to the next one? I think that's it. So we're going to do this in two parts. Tomorrow, we're going to introduce this Patience. We're going to have her interview and let the folks discuss with her. And then we'll basically characterize the system of systems context, which is usually what we do in the first step of the system problem. And then basically describe a starter strongman model of all the elements of that community-based mission critical activity, all the different components, their activities and their interactions as a draft baseline representation of how this community-based mission capability is executed under an operational situation. It's a starter. We think we want people to look at it, provide feedback. And the idea would be that we'll provide this tomorrow, give people the material to take a look at, and then on day 2, if you go to the next one, we'll sit down and we'll review what people think about the model, the overall approach, the objectives, the model, do a markup and a review of what we presented as a strong hand. And then the idea would be to take an updated model of who does what to whom, bring it into a tabletop exercise where we take an actual scenario or series of scenarios with players on each one of these to actually see how, if you execute the way the plans are laid out, what issues do you run into? Where do you run into problems? What are the gaps and what are the options? And then repeat that with changes to be able to understand where improvements in the process could lead to more effective outcomes for the event. So that will be the planning for that tabletop exercise will be the results of the day 2 event.
I have a question here.
Sure.
Surely human is involved in the system of system, right?
Yeah.
So do you now consider human as a system or part of the system?
Yeah, we go to the next one.
Okay. Because my question is more on the socio-technical side of the story, because human is not a system. It's not like, yeah. You take that into account as well, right?
Absolutely. So what's up here is that draft of that model. Each of those lanes are an organization or a group, so the affected population. their actions and reactions are critical to the outcome of the event. So they are a player or a component of this system of systems.
Right.
So we actually treat organizations and groups, treat them as systems in the system of systems, because it's definitely a socio-technical system of systems.
Right.
And in fact, what will happen, I actually teach this at Johns Hopkins, what will happen is the engineers will want to look at the voltage of the power. And that may be important, because if it's not right and you plug things in, things don't work, but it's the planning to arrive at the voltages. That's probably an important function in this system of systems. So your point is exactly correct. And so we're really stepping back and dealing with this as a large socio-technical system of systems.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Because the interesting part is that we start taking this as a socio-technical system.
yes,
Then agreement cannot be right always. So you should have some probability models that with such a percent probability he's taking the right action.
Right.
Although he knows it.
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, and I do this with military systems and systems, and you do exactly that, because we use large Monte Carlo simulations, and we vary these kinds of things to say, no, that given the probability of this, how likely are we to be successful in the result? And my theory is that while we do it for military systems, we could be doing a similar sort of thing with these kinds of systems and bringing that kind of approach to the broader, much as our INCOSI 2035 is really suggested. So it's a chance for us to kind of try it out. We also think that there are things like requirements that, typically we will do requirements. I joke with my requirements, for instance, kind of the hermit, the frog, man on the street, tell me your requirements, tell me. Here, the requirements will be derived of where are the gaps. I didn't plan for this, I've got a gap in my planning capability, that if I don't plan for it, it's gonna have a benefit. What can we do? The other thing, if you come and hear patients as interviewed, trust is so critically important.
Right.
That if the population trusts the government and they say it's an impending disaster, you need to leave your home,
Right.
you're more likely to take action and will have less loss of life or property, which is, your objective is to minimize those things. They can do exactly the same thing, no trust, different outcome.
Right.
And so it's a very complex adaptive system of systems as well.
Nice.
Which, really stresses us as systems engineers when we're accustomed to drawing that boundary, control and everything. Now, what can we bring to these kinds of situations, et cetera? So that's really what we're trying to experiment with, because we think many systems, when you start to look at it more broadly, look more like this
Right.
than they look like technical systems. So technical systems have their own set of challenges, no doubt about it, and I think very important area as well. So, but this is one which we think is worth exploring.
Nice.
Yeah, a question, you are speaking with the model, are you going to use a particular language, for example?
That's a good question. What we did here, this is a straw man. I use my favorite straw man tool, PowerPoint. To start with that, so we're not biasing it. When I do this, I use system model in some cases, I use business process model in some cases, depending on the circumstance. And so when people take a look at it in the workshop, and maybe one of us here to do a version of it in the structured modeling language, I think that's a good next step.
Yeah, it will be interesting to use a UF for that,
Yeah.
and they will help.
Yep, absolutely. So I think, what we're gonna be doing is asking different working groups, do you want to participate and what could you bring to the party? And I think putting this, both updating the model in terms of the content, we'll have people do that, but then actually representing it in the structured modeling language, I think will be very.
Yeah, because the value at the end is to be capable to reuse some elements of the model in different views so that get to analysis and maybe some simulation.
Absolutely. And what we do mission engineering and defense,
Yeah.
absolutely we do this. So
The only risk is if we take established, if you wish, hard systems engineering tools and apply them to this very, very sort of technical situation, we might be a bit biased in interpreting the situation. So I think it's quite good actually to start with even just pencil and paper to. So
Yeah, that might be a
because we need to understand our established frameworks really. That's way of handling this kind of situation. Question of consistency. Model. No, are we using such things? Okay, so you know, visual or whatever. But at the end, if you want to reuse stuff, the consistency is done by the model. But
Well, this is actually.
This is perfect day 2 discussion of the. Genuine.
Take pencil and paper over here,
yeah.
and then try what would it look like if we modeled it in different ways.
You know, you start with brainstorming. Yeah, I would say it's very consistent because there are different attitudes to this. They don't have to say the view of actually is, so it will not be consistent.
So it may well be that if people are interested for the way ahead, we have different groups applying softer methods, more deterministic methods, simulation ones, and we compare notes. That would be quite interesting. Mike Henlow's got a hand raised online. Give Mike a chance.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Alan. Judith, I'm not going to be able to dial in for the wildfire stuff for IW because I've got some prior commitments. But as things continue to go on, definitely interested in helping out with this because in addition to being a qualified systems engineer, I was also did HADR for US Northcom for about 2.5 years, and I'm really familiar with disaster relief within the continental United States and done a couple of exercises with them. So definitely interested in helping out.
Okay.
I made a note of here, like, thank you. Thank you very much.
I think I want to chime in. Really, it's like, so this is just to set the stage, make sure that we're all talking the same, or we all understand the same, what the scenario is, what the issue is, and we're trying to compete against them, and then take that, and then we can take that away, right? And then model different aspects of it. Everybody, we should hopefully using the same words, same language, for being able to have different groups potentially model their portions of it and tie them all together eventually. I think that at the end of the day, we can at least set the stage, we're all on agreeing to the same thing, then that will help get, get forward.
To enable also to enable general abstract, we want to have another scenario to see if the language is very specific.
Yeah, I mean, even when we were talking about patients, I mean, a wildfire is one thing, but ice storms are another, any sort of different aspect.
Spain's had floods, for instance. Nice contrast to nice being wrong word, but from an illustrative position, if we get a contrast, it might just help see how general syntax.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We sort of pick one to get everybody together to get started, but I think that's exactly right. And the question then becomes, is it the same for a wildfire in an ice storm, or are there really big differences that you need to have classes of disaster that would respond differently, and then we abstract it up too far, you lose it. I don't know. But this is a good systems set of questions.
And ultimately, to value the content, it might just be a challenge to particular ways of choosing to construct or describe methods.
Yeah, so I mean, as I've said, we haven't volunteered to do anything follow up for this because we'll see what happens tomorrow. It's a good experiment, but I think that's kind of what Encosia offers us, is a chance to look at these things with multiple people with multiple views and sort of see what happens. So hopefully many of you will join us tomorrow.
It's really capturing some interest.
Yeah. Good. All right.
Yeah. So,
So the next topic is